This is the Chat City interviews from 103.2 Preston FM with your host, Hughie Parr.
It's Tom Brown from the Harris Library. It's not Tom Harris from the Harris Library.
Or from the Brown Library.
Yeah, from the Brown Library, that's right. Anyway, Tom, nice to meet you again on Chat City. And I believe one of the things that you'd like to talk to us about and tell our listeners about are reading groups. That are these actually held at the Harris Museum?
Many of them are, yes, yeah. Obviously, it won't have escaped too many people's attention that it was World Book Day about a week and a half ago now, maybe. I think it was the 6th of March. And so I just wanted to come on along, and if there was anybody who really loves reading but would also like to find people, like-minded people who read as well, and would likes to get into discussions about reading, or even just any kind of would like to kind of be part of a social group where reading is part of it as well. Then just come on here, explain a little bit about reading groups, and try and make it sound as friendly and warm and inviting as possible, so that people are encouraged to come along and find out more.
So are there different kinds of categories of reading groups? I mean, are there adults, children, etc., etc., etc.?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment at the Harris Library, there are two of these groups where, when people think of reading groups, they think of what I might term a traditional reading group. It's the kind of one that people kind of know about most, where a group will get together once a month, and over the course of the month they have all read the same novel. And so when they get together, they discuss the novel and, what they liked about it, what they didn't, whether they were even able to finish it. Also things like, they'll get together and just chat about their day or chat about their month and stuff, and all that kind of thing. So it's... we do have two of those reading groups at the Harris that meet currently once a month. One on the first Thursday of the month at 2:00, and another on the third Friday of the month at 2:00. So if anybody's interested, come along to just discuss a novel that they've read recently, or these specific novels as well, that the group reads, then they're very welcome to. We do have other reading groups as well, though. One in particular that I really like, because I kind of run it a little bit at the Harris myself, is something called a shared reading group. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of the term bibliotherapy before.
Of what, sorry?
Bibliotherapy.
Maybe in the
You could probably guess what it kind of means.
Yes, come on, tell us a little more.
There's this term called bibliotherapy where basically the thing is that, reading and talking about your reading and talking about and discussing books, it can be a way in to kind of reflecting upon things in your life or discussing it with other people in your life as well. And so in some circles, there's something called bibliotherapy, where people will come in and you will have some sort of text which can deal with a particular issue. So, for instance, the issue, it could be a short story about homelessness, for instance, and some of the people who come along to the group might have had some experiences with being homeless, or with colleagues or relatives who have been homeless, whatever, and coming along to the group can be using the text as a kind of springboard. You can get people discussing things that are going on in their lives. I mean, I've used homelessness as just an example.
Well, right, yeah, I understand. So in a way, what we're talking about is what you would read a book, but then you would associate actual things that have happened to you in your life with what you're reading in the book. So you can actually talk about the book, but you can then put the perspective onto what you're talking about, because you've actually experienced some of the things that the authors experienced in the book.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Yes, exactly. And it can be a good way to get people thinking along certain lines. And, if for instance, I used the example of homelessness before, if it's something that nobody has experienced before, it's a good way to get people thinking about it. And if there are other people in the group who have some experience of it, it's all kind of getting new opinions on things, and helps with kind of being open to other people's interpretations, not just of the text, but of things that happen in their lives as well. So it's a really nice way to be a little to support each other, really, for people to come together and support each other with some things. And there's an element of that in our shared reading group that we have that meets every fortnight at the Harris Library at 1:30 and on a Wednesday. And we basically, rather than a kind of more traditional reading group where people get together and read a novel over a whole month, you don't have to do any kind of preparation beforehand. You come in, we all read a short story together. One person is reading it out loud and everybody else is just following it in the text, and just take periodical breaks to kind of discuss what's going on, what people might want to share about their own experiences with things as well, and all kinds of stuff, really. And it's a really nice, friendly group, really lovely group who, it's with many of these things, it's often like a nice social group, really, as well. It's a nice way for people to get out of the house and do something and stretch their minds a bit as well.
It sounds like that. And within the reading groups, I mean, what kind of books have recently been focused on? I mean, is it modern literature or?
Yeah, I mean, it can be quite a mix. What we will often do with the monthly reading groups is we give them the option of which books they would like to read for the course of the whole year. And so, for instance, the Thursday reading group, its next book that it is reading, it's meeting on the 4th of April, is going to be The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, which is actually one of my favourite books, so that's really good. So obviously it's a very nice book. That it's relatively short, but it's translated from Brazilian into English, so it's fairly straightforward language, but it kind of comes up with some nice kind of philosophical stuff to it. So I really like it. But obviously they've read other books as well recently. So on one of the most recent books was Lucky Jim by Kingsley Amis. There's a mix of classics and modern novels as well that they'll read, and it's up to the reading group, really, to a large extent. We have another reading group though, the Cult reading group.
The Cult
reading group, yes. They currently meet in a pub. They get the books from us, but they meet in a pub, and as you might imagine, they will read material that's a bit different. So occasionally it could be a graphic novel, it could be some sci-fi literature or some fantasy or whatever, really. And we're also thinking of trying to make them into an online reading group as well, so people can discuss it online and all that kind of stuff, and get together, and so people don't necessarily have to meet in the pub if they don't want to. They can discuss online and meet up in all kinds of different places.
And we were just mentioning a few moments ago about books that maybe you never get to the end of. Have you ever had a book that you've never got to the end of that you consistently try to read?
I have. I don't, in a way, but in a way not, because all of these books that I'm kind of haven't finished yet, I still have in my mind, but I've just not finished them yet. I've still got the bookmark in them, like, I'll get to the end eventually at some point. I never used to be one of these people who would have 5 books on the go at once.
Yes,
I'd always
get
one and just go straight for it, finish it. But now recently, I kind of have 5 books on the go at once and just flip between them a little bit.
So there's not the one that you go back to every maybe 6-7 months or every year and you think, I must get to the end of that. I mean, mine is definitely far from the maddening crowd. One day I will get to the end of that book. Not sure when, but one day.
Well, I did have one, Good News, Bad News. I think it's David Wollstonecraft, I believe, is the author of that. It was one of these ones about 5 years ago. It was on Richard and Judy's book club, and it sounded really great. So I got it, and I think I'm halfway through it, and kind of still haven't finished it after quite a few years now.
Yes.
Always meaning to go back to it, but just not doing so. So I guess that's probably the closest I've got to it. But always in my mind, I'm thinking, I'll go back to that.
So have the reading groups at the library, have they been taking place for quite some time now?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the shared reading group, the short story reading group, it's only been going for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years now. It's a relatively new kind of way of thinking about reading groups. But the monthly reading groups that read a novel, they've been going in libraries for years and years. And before they were in libraries, I'm sure people had their reading groups in whichever way they found to do it, really. But yeah, in libraries we've been having reading groups for ages. We've got special reading group collections for reading groups to come in. So if anybody in fact is interested in setting up their own reading group, they don't necessarily want to meet at the library, but would be interested in setting up a reading group and doing it, meeting at friends' houses or whatever, then come and talk to your local library and we'll be able to arrange to provide some books for you for it, really.
Right. I don't know if you heard, I think it was Eddie Marr's show on radio Sunday morning at 9 a.m, but they were discussing books, and the question that they posed to the people who were in the studio was, how do you get someone to get over a reading block? And this was brought up by one of the guests on the show, who said that she tried everything to get her 14-year-old son interested in reading again. And they were asking the guests what would be the book they would choose, or how would they do it. If you'd have been on that panel, how would you have responded? How would you try to persuade a teenager to pick up a book again and read?
It can be difficult because, I mean, for one thing, teenagers have so many other things going on in their lives that, if you go into a primary school and ask the kids there who loves reading, the whole assembly puts their hand up. If you go into a high school, and you won't get so many, because I think for one thing with it is that I always think that reading is, when you're young, it's like a challenge, and you're learning as you're reading things, and your imagination is so kind of vast that it's very easy to do. But then when you become when you get into teenage years, in general, a lot of people kind of know how to read by that point already. So it's something they've done. And there's other things that come up in their lives, and so it's difficult. I mean, for any individual, whether it's a teenager or not, it really depends a huge amount on their interests. And it's easy enough to kind of stereotype, it's a teenager, so they might be interested in these things. Teenagers are as individual as anybody else, as any other sector of society. So it really depends what they're interested in. I know a lot of people will occasionally be down on things like graphic novels, thinking, it's not proper reading. But graphic novels possibly a way to go with it, because it's a very visual medium. But obviously it has a lot of things with a lot of current film directors are very keen graphic novel readers, and so because of that there's a lot of films that come out these days which were adapted from graphic novels. So maybe that's one way into it. If they're a particular film buff, they might want to read the source material. And obviously there's all these people like Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman, who are huge authors, really. Some of the most popular authors in the world are graphic novel authors. And so, they tell stories which are really rich in detail and theme, and so it's possible that they might be interested in that. It's possible that they're a 14-year-old who likes dancing, so there may be some stories involved in dancing. I don't know. I think, to me, it's not about having to read stories, it's about just reading anything. So if they're reading a newspaper, if they're reading websites, then they're still reading, and it's the reading that's the important bit. It doesn't matter what you're reading specifically. To me, it's the reading that's the important bit. So this 14-year-old could well be going on the internet every day and reading some articles, or be part of a forum where they discuss things that they're interested in. They're reading while they're doing that. That's a good point for me, really. It doesn't have to be fiction that people read.
And that was one of the contributors on the show on Sunday very much was talking about graphic novels and the way often that will open the door to people wanting to then read more novels. I mean, when it comes to novels, or maybe there's a TV program or there's a film, would you rather read the book before seeing the film, or see the film before you read the book?
It depends on the film itself, because it could be, for instance, The Godfather is obviously recognised by many people to be, one of the best films ever made, but the book itself gets mixed reviews by people. So, is it better to watch a film or read the book? I think in that case, watch a film probably. For something like Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, I read them already when I was young, and then the films come out, and so I can see, oh well, that bit's different to how it was in the book and things like that. So it's to me, it also depends a bit on how much time you have, because we all lead busy lives nowadays, and so there can be something really appealing about just being able to get the story in 2 hours, as opposed to a book which could be, take you, a few days to read or a few weeks or something. But in general, obviously, the author has so much going on in the story and so much thematically in the book itself, that if you did really like the film, then it's always a good idea in my mind to then read the book, because you can get so much more from it. Or you can even, the way that the film's presented, you can see that there's certain things that not necessarily that they're left out, but certain themes that they might have decided to ignore, or you can get more from the book if you want to. I would normally encourage people to read a book first, if they're interested in that particular genre, but to each their own.
Yes. Well, Tom, just remind us the reading classes then, when they're coming up next, the adult one first of all.
Yeah, there are. So there's 2 adult reading groups. The next one is on the Thursday, the 4th of April. For the Thursday reading group, and then the Friday reading group, the next one of them is on the Friday 19th of April. There's a shared reading group which is happening next Wednesday, which I can't off the top of my head remember what date that is, but not tomorrow, but next week.
Wednesday.
Wednesday, 1:30. There's a shared reading group meeting there. Cult reading group meets on the first Monday of a month. So that is sometime in April, beginning of April. And there's also a young adult reading group, a teen reading group, which we have, which meets on Sundays. So that should be happening. The next one of those is actually on the 30th, on Mother's Day. So 30th of March, that is. And that's usually meets around 2:00 as well.
Brilliant. Well, nice to meet you again this morning, and thanks for coming in, Tom, and telling us all about the reading groups at the Harris. And hopefully see you in the not-too-distant future. And I'll get your name right this time. It's Tom Brown from the Harris Museum, and not Tom Harris from the Brown Museum or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Tom, thanks for coming in this morning.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.
If you've got news, views or events you'd like to share with us and the Chat City team, why not give us an email? chatcity@preston.fm.